Timba broka mi paketi maya. Timba broka mi paketi maya. Oh, timba broka mi paketi maya. Oh, timba broka mi paketi maya. Oh, timba drapa mi hipeti maya. Oh, timba drapa mi hipeti maya. Timba ebilu. Timba ebilu. Oh, timba drapa mi futeti maya. Oh, timba drapa mi futeti maya. Timba drapa mi paketi maya. Timba drapa mi paketi maya. Timba twisa mi hipeti maya. Timba twisa mi hipeti maya.
Let us cooperate for Guyana. Let us cooperate for our land. Let us resolve to fight together. See we do it right together. Can we do it? Yes, we can.
Each man must do his bit.
Welcome to another edition of The Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and we continue our examination of Guyana's public policy, particularly the interface between domestic policy and foreign policy. And today we'll be examining particularly the situation affecting Haitian migrants. And we ask ourselves the question, should Guyana remove the restrictions which this administration, the PPP administration, has imposed on the Haitians, in my view, illegally? Millions of viewers around the world will remember that in September last year, but I think it's around the 20th of September last year, there were images of what appeared to be white border agents in the United States mounted on horseback, using their reins as whips against unarmed people, black people who were Haitian migrants in the river. It looks like a scene from 400 years ago. You know, white men on horseback and black women in the river. But this is very much 2021 and very much in the United States of America. And I think even the White House, I mean, people all around the world were really disgusted at the images, and they called on the United States to desist from expelling those persons, about 14,000 Haitians, who were just trying to gain asylum. And even immigration agents, international experts condemned what they call obscene, obscene expulsion policy of the United States, especially with regard to Haitians who were simply seeking asylum. And many people regard it as a violation of international law. And even the USA's own special envoy to Haiti resigned over what he called an inhumane policy. He refused to be associated with such a policy of deporting Haitians from the United States, especially under those cruel conditions. My friends, Haiti is an enigma, and many people fall victim to stereotypes about the Haitians. There's a lot of prejudice. There's several stigmas and so on. And I think we must I won't make this history lesson, but you'll see appear in a little book I wrote some time ago called The 5,000 Day War. And Haiti's biggest crime in this hemisphere is that it was the first successful revolt against enslaved Africans, against by enslaved Africans against European slave masters, and this lasted for 5,000 days. It just went on year after year. Haiti was invaded by three imperial armies: the army of Britain, the army of France, the army of Spain, and that of course, it depopulated the country immensely and devastated the countryside. And the ruins that you can see in Haiti are, in fact, effects of that war by the European countries, those three European empires, over 200 years ago. And up to now, we still see the effects of that warfare. But in addition to that, that invasion by three imperial armies, the United States later on in the last century occupied Haiti for about 20 years, from 1915 to about 1929 or thereabouts. And there was a revolt against the United States. So there's no love lost between Haiti and the United States. And of course, the rebels were hunted down, and the rebel leader, Charlemagne Perrault, was executed by the Americans. And even so, the stereotypes persist, and we find that even in Central America today, the attitude to Haitians has been colored by this stigma. The International Organization of Migration, IOM, reported that Central American states deported 10,800 Haitians, sent them back to Haiti, most of them from the United States, within the period of 1 month, from 19th of September to the 19th of October last year. 10,000 Haitians were sent back. And of course, they failed to protect Haitians. They failed to observe international law, and they exposed Haitians to the same perils from which they took flight. That is, distortions or detentions, extortion, gang warfare, and of course, it is always tinged with racial discrimination, because by far the Haitians are a black-skinned people. Of course, there are mulattoes and there might be others, but the majority of Haitians who are seeking to flee from their country are quite clearly black-skinned. Even international governmental organizations have not really accepted their responsibility, or they have not tried to resolve the migration crisis. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, yes, they are concerned about displaced persons. The World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank, they provide funds, they provide loans, but sometimes they're not aware that the very loans that they're providing, in order to open up the economy or make it, perhaps more friendly for investment, trigger migration, because many of those policies help to entrench a manufacturing class, a bureaucratic class, investors who keep the mass of the population in poverty. So the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it is the poor who seek to escape because there are no new opportunities for employment or for living a good life. So many of the international organizations, even if they're well-meaning, actually embark on policies which aggravate poverty because they adhere to certain market principles, maybe which work good in Canada, United States, but they don't work good in Haiti at all. And even European Union, it has provided funds for joint Haitian-Dominican Republic projects, but it don't deal with migration. Haiti is enigmatic, and Haiti is problematic, and unfortunately, many of the remedies that they propose by these international organizations cannot cure the problems of Haiti. And many people go there with certain presuppositions, but they don't work. CARICOM, on the other hand, has done quite a lot in terms of its appreciation of the plight of Haiti. And Haiti is a member of the Caribbean community. That is something we must understand. That is something people in the Guyana government don't seem to appreciate. CARICOM has made a large number of important decisions over the last 15 years or so. At its 28th regular meeting, CARICOM ordered, decreed, agreed that CARICOM nationals should be allowed an automatic 6-month stay on arrival in any other CARICOM member state. Any other CARICOM member state. So it is a decision which was taken over 15 years ago. And it has never really been fully embraced by the present administration, although when I was in government, the APNU-AFC coalition did embrace that decision. In 2015, at its 36th meeting of heads of government, CARICOM condemned the behavior of the Dominican Republic. They described the Dominican Republic policies toward the Haitians as barbarity. I mean, it's a strong word for one country to use about another. But when you understand that Dominican Republic actually made 250,000 people stateless. These are people who speak Spanish. They grew up in Dominican Republic, but they don't have documents. They are black-skinned, and in fact, the Dominican Republic, in its enthusiasm, even gathered some Nigerians in the net. But really, the bulk of people have nowhere to go. They didn't come from Haiti. Perhaps their great-grandparents or their grandparents came from Haiti. But they speak and sing Spanish songs with their guitars. And it's just that they don't have documents, but these people were made stateless. It is something that should never exist in the Caribbean. The Caribbean community has a charter of civil society, and it mandates respect for the fundamental rights and privileges of all of its citizens. Again, in 2018, I was already president. CARICOM accepted that Haitians were entitled as members of CARICOM. They were entitled to a 6-month automatic entry into other member states. My coalition administration in 2019, soon after CARICOM made that decision, issued an order for Haitian nationals to enter Guyana without visas. As soon as the PPP got in, the PPP revoked my order. And in 2021, they reasserted the necessity for Haitians to get visas to enter the country. We'll come back to the PPP administration's treatment of Haitians in a little while. But what the PPP administration is doing is contrary to international law. And international law, for the last 70 years or so, has helped to protect immigrants and refugees. The United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees was promulgated since 1951, and it's a centerpiece of international refugee protection. As you know, after the Second World War, many people were moving, as you know, the way the Nazi Germans treated the Jews, and there were many displaced people. A similar situation has recurred today when a lot of Ukrainians are fleeing the conflict with Russia. And as you know, because of the wars started by United States in in uh, in Iraq and Syria, and of course the North Africa, the instability caused by regime change and the policies of removing rulers. Some of them maybe deserve to be removed, but what has happened is that these actions, these hostile actions, particularly by Western powers, triggered a huge surge of migrants from North Africa and from Asia into Europe. So migration is a big problem. Even in the East, in Myanmar, refugees are trying to get into Australia and other nearby countries. So around the world, there's a huge migration problem, and the international community, just 6 years after the end of the Second World War, promulgated this convention relating to the status of refugees. So there is a convention. Guyana never really signed on to that convention, but we have our own protocols within the Caribbean community. And we have no legislation for asylum seekers, but we have certain other conventions which we abide by. In our own constitution, the Prevention of Discrimination Act prohibits discrimination on grounds of ethnicity or nationality. So even though it is not called a refugee act, it is certainly useful in protecting the safety of migrants and refugees coming into Guyana. But the Haitians are treated as migrants. Many of them are not interested in staying in Guyana. They want to go to Cayenne, where they can meet maybe other family members. They can go. I met Haitian migrants in Chile. Some of them went to Brazil to participate in construction in the Olympic Village and so on. So they're hardworking people. But Guyana has the Prevention of Discrimination Act. And we also have an Immigration Act, which was amended as recently as 2007. So Guyana is not without legislation. It is just that the present administration is ignoring that legislation. International human rights law prohibits states from returning people to places where their lives or freedom would be at risk. This is the situation in Haiti. We know that for a lot of reasons, and we wouldn't go into those reasons today, there is violent crime in Haiti. We know recently, with less than a year ago, the president of Haiti was assassinated. There are human rights violations. There is food insecurity. There's environmental disaster, and this is something really tragic. Sometimes there are 2 hurricanes in Haiti. Some Caribbean countries have no hurricanes, and Haiti, luckless Haiti, sometimes can get 2 earthquakes. And then, of course, we had a devastating earthquake in which nearly 250,000 people died. And of course, for different reasons, because of the economic structure of Haitian society or Haitian economy, maybe a few people get rich, but the majority of people cannot find work. Well, it is well known that even under Baby Doc, the son of that dictator, Papa Doc, François Duvalier, Jean-Claude Duvalier actually introduced some commercial enterprises, but those benefited the owners of those enterprises. Many people in the diaspora in the United States, for example, who play baseball might be playing baseball with balls made in Haiti. Haiti is, I think, one of the world's largest producers of baseballs. But you can't live by baseballs alone. The economy is just not diversified, and many people in Haiti have been unemployed. Now, in Guyana, my friends, we have a situation in which not only are we the largest CARICOM state, but we always considered ourselves to be a hospitable people. And we are home to over 36,000 Venezuelan Warao people. They are Brazilians, maybe another 10 or 20,000 Brazilians. You can go down certain streets in Georgetown and see Brazilian restaurants, Brazilian stores, entertainment places. And of course, they are the major diamond miners in Guyana. Cubans come in here, it is difficult to walk through the streets of Georgetown, downtown Georgetown, the central business district, and not run into Cubans with huge bags where they come to do shopping. So the amount of Venezuelans, Cubans, and Brazilians in this country is quite phenomenal. And I would say that in general, Guyana has been a hospitable destination. So it is rather odd that, when it comes to Haitians, the present administration should take such a hostile attitude. Uh, my coalition administration created a Department of Citizenship to manage migration in a humane fashion. This happened the same year that we got into office. It is one of the first departments I created, and the minister, Vincent Felix, was actually appointed minister with responsibility for citizenship. Because at that time, I realized that migration was a major international problem. And we tried to get ahead of the game by managing it rather than allowing it to get out of control. Right now, there's no such department. As soon as the PPP got into office, they destroyed the department. So now we don't know who's in charge of migration. That department under my administration was able to work with civil society, work with the IOM, the International Organization of Migration, and put together plans for the humane settlement of migrants. And what we see now in Guyana is that Venezuelan migrants are scavenging in rubbish dumps. They're breaking into other people's farms. In fact, it has become lawless. It has become lawless. And I think we must give consideration, or the government must give consideration to the reestablishment of that Department of Citizenship. It's very important, and especially what is taking place now. But let's get back to the Haitians. Now, apart from admitting thousands, and I say thousands, there, of Venezuelan migrants, unregistered, undocumented, and unfortunately, some of them bring disease, and many of them are destitute. But they are allowed to settle and work and live. When it comes to Haitians, what we see is that the Haitians normally travel in very stable family units. Just look at the pictures in the United States at the Del Rio incident in September 2021. You see women and children. You're not seeing bandidos. You're not seeing destitute people. Well, maybe they're poor, but they travel in family units, husband, wife, children. And when they're called upon to work, and I could tell you from my conversation with the Brazilian president, my conversation with the Chilean president, that is, well, remarkably, those two presidents that I met were women presidents, so maybe they are more sympathetic than the male presidents. But certainly Michelle Bachelet in Chile was very sympathetic. And Dilma Rousseff in Brazil was very sympathetic to Haitian migrants in those two countries, Brazil and Chile. But in Guyana, we seem to have become very hostile. And hostile for what? For what reason? You find, six Haitians in a hotel in Caribaton, and these people are arrested and detained and deported. You find some in some hotel in Georgetown, men and women and children. These people are not, being trafficked. These people are not bandits. These people are seeking a good life, and many of them are on their way to a destination of their choice. As I said, many prefer to go to Cayenne because it speaks a variety. The people there speak a variety of French, and the Haitian Creole is a variety of French. And we need to look carefully at the policies which our administration has been not only adopting but also enforcing. Now, after this government, this PPP administration, detained and deported Haitians, the matter was brought by a very enthusiastic lawyer to the High Court. And the High Court quashed the orders by which the government of Guyana was detaining and deporting Haitians in what I would almost call a program, but they're such small numbers. You were allowing 36,000 Venezuelans to come in, but 6 Haitians in a hotel in Coriverton seem to be a threat to state security. But we all know the reason why they're treated in that way. The court ruled that the action by the Guyana government, by its law enforcement agencies, which is covered which is contrary to the Constitution, which provides for the protection of the right to personal liberty and the protection of freedom of movement, much less the CARICOM Convention, the CARICOM Charter of Civil Society, were being breached. And it made those orders void. But as yet, the PPP administration in Guyana has not changed its attitude to Haitian migrants. Its attitude to Venezuelan migrants and Brazilian migrants is different, but Haitian migrants seem to have been selected for special treatment. My friends, what needs to be done? This program is not about quarreling. This program is not about the past. This program is about the future. This program is about policy. We call upon the government of Guyana to reestablish the Department of Citizenship so that there is an institution with a structure, with resources and assets, which can manage this problem of migration. It's not going to go away. Migration is not going to go away. Most Guyanese are descendants of migrants to start with. And migration has been continuous. There have been Portuguese migrants, Chinese migrants, African migrants, West Indian migrants. And that is the type of society that we have become. Let us get back the Department of Citizenship so that it will manage migration. Right now, it is not only unmanaged, but it has become unmanageable. The migration problem in Guyana has become a flood. It started as a trickle with a few Brazilian miners, but now the amount of Brazilians, Cubans, Haitians, and Venezuelans in Guyana is comparable to a flood. The government of Guyana should respect CARICOM resolutions. And over the last 15 years or more, CARICOM has been passing resolutions and embracing conventions to allow the unimpeded entry of CARICOM nationals into their territories. Yes, there are certain conditions, but Guyana is in breach of those conditions. When I was in government, I passed orders which were compliant with CARICOM resolutions. And the order that was passed last year by the PPP administration is defiant of those resolutions. And we call upon the government to return to legality. We call on the government to comply with United Nations Convention for protection of refugees. And these conventions have existed soon after the Second World War in 1951. And they should desist. The government of Guyana right now should desist from deporting migrants, detaining migrants. And if it ceases to change its attitude, civic-minded citizens should take this matter to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and bring Guyana face-to-face with international best practice. We do not have to treat Haitians this way. They're not a danger to society, to law and order. And it is making Guyana into a hostile state when we have a reputation of being friendly to other peoples. The Guyana government must get its act together and treat the Haitians in a humane way. This is a humanitarian situation, and the attitude adopted by the government so far in its less than 2 years has been one of hostility rather than hospitality. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Let us cooperate for the young. Let us cooperate for our land. Let us resolve to fight together. See we do it right together. Can we do it? Yes, we can.
Each man must do his